Can this marriage be saved? Well, there certainly is no marriage between George Bush and Democrats. Yet, ever the optimist, the president does say he wants to work with Democrats. And as to Republicans, if there ever was a marriage, it certainly was a marriage of convenience. As George said, today I'm the White House correspondent for the New York Times, one of two. You'd really drive yourself into the ground if you tried to do this job alone. And it's an assignment I came to by a circuitous route. I spent about 10 years covering science and medicine, first for the Los Angeles Times and then for the New York Times, until a few years ago when I decided to reinvent myself. I abandoned my expertise in topics like anthrax and stem cell research and decided to become a congressional correspondent. And I called home like any dutiful daughter would, and I told my mother the news. "That's nice, dear," she said. "You can finally use your political science degree." So now I landed on Capitol Hill right after the 2002 midterms, and I recall my editors saying to me, "Oh, you'll have to go up for the Tuesday lunches." And these would be the luncheons that the senators have separately, Republicans and Democrats, in the Capitol to discuss matters of policy. But I remember thinking, oh, isn't that nice? They have lunch on Tuesdays. And I don't know, maybe I envisioned myself having watercress sandwiches with John Warner and Bob Byrd. But the reality was I was stuck by a bank of elevators, standing out there with my little notebook and tape recorder in hand, behind a velvet rope, waiting for the senators to emerge from the luncheons so that I could run after them with the tape recorder to find out what was going on inside. And I have to say I learned very quickly how to stick my foot inside the elevator door marked Senators Only, which is a really great way of holding them captive. And if you stand there and keep your foot there long enough, you can get invited inside, and then they're really captive. Now, for someone whose days had previously been spent engaged in deep discussion of esoteric matters like stem cell research and the ethics of embryo research, this was quite a shock. But I found that I really loved Capitol Hill. I loved the liveliness of it. I almost became more patriotic as I covered Congress. The stories could be kind of nitty-gritty, like the time Dick Cheney told Pat Leahy where to go using a certain expletive on the Senate floor. Or they could be uplifting, like the Senate confirmation of the Supreme Court Chief Justice, John Roberts, which I covered. And unlike regular Senate votes where the senators mingle about and talk on the floor, during the confirmation of a Supreme Court justice, all the senators remain seated, and they rise one by one as their names are called. And watching it kind of feels like taking a step back in American history, which is one reason I really loved being in the Capitol. I loved being in the physical space. When I first got there, the Senate historian took me around for a private tour. He showed me the bathtubs in the basement. Did you know that there were bathtubs in the basement? I had no idea. And he took me to this impossible-to-find space under the crypt, where the wooden catafalque built for Lincoln's casket is still kept. And it's taken out whenever there's a state funeral or when a president lies in state in the rotunda, as Ronald Reagan and Gerald Ford did. So I love the history, but I want to talk to you today about the present. I spent more than 3 years on the Hill before I moved to the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue last spring. And I had already been thinking a lot about the relationship between Congress and the President. But covering the White House has really helped cement my feelings about the relationship between this particular Congress, or these past few Congresses, and this particular president, which leads me to the title of my talk, George W. Bush and the United States Congress, Can This Marriage Be Saved?